Hello there and welcome. This video demonstrates how to add charts to your Excel spreadsheets so you can graphically represent your numeric data. Well, to start us off, we're going to take a look at the fastest way to create a chart. You're going to select the information that you would like to incorporate into your chart, and then using the function keys along the top of your keyboard, look for that F11 function key, just give it a press, and it will generate a chart, right, on its own sheet that incorporates that selected data. So just looking at the bottom of the screen here, I'm on a new sheet. It's called Chart 2, and the data that is driving this chart is over here on a separate sheet. They are dynamically linked, so as the information changes here on the spreadsheet, the data updates, the chart will update as well automatically. So if you're looking for a very quick way to just create a chart, use your F11 function key. It's the best tip around when it comes to creating your charts. Let's take a look at some of the parts that make up your chart and the tools that you can use to manipulate them, format them, etc. So here's the chart. I'm going to go ahead and just move my mouse around specific areas, and what you'll notice is there will be a tooltip identifying that particular chart part. So if I hover over the title, it lets me know this is the chart title. If I hover over the outer area of the chart, it'll tell me this is the chart area. As I move in, it'll indicate the plot area. As you hover over the bars that represent the data, you'll get a tooltip that indicates the name of the data point and the specific value. So you're going to see that for each and every bar or pie slice or what have you, depending on what chart you're using there. Along the bottom, you'll also have information within the axes. So I've got the horizontal or category axis. I've got the legend. So the legend, as I hover over it, will let me know it's the legend. And of course, over on the left side, the secondary axis, the vertical or value axis. So it's good to identify the different parts of the chart. Just hover over it and it'll give you an idea of what it's called. And then if you need to manipulate it, you can usually do that in a number of different ways. For example, if it is the bars themselves, you can typically, for example, right click and you'll be able to get to some options. You'll be able to format, in many cases, those items that you've right clicked. And that would be maybe one way to sort of begin manipulating and feeling your way around. I know a lot of people like to right click. So depending on where you're right clicking, and that tooltip will tell you where you are, they're contextual, you can right click and you will get the choices that will allow you to change them or format that particular chart part. Also, as we mentioned earlier, there is the contextual tab on the ribbon here underneath chart tools that will allow you to get to specific areas of your chart and manipulate them. For example, a big one is the design, but you also have the format tab as well. So if your chart is not selected, you may not see those tools, but as soon as your chart is selected, you should have access to them. So for example, on the design tab, if you want to just quickly change the look and feel of your chart, maybe grab one of the preset options that are available there, and as you hover over it will show you what they look like. You can click the one that you would like to apply. If you want to maybe just change the colors a little bit based on what it has given you, not a problem. You can use the change color to the left of this chart style gallery and pick something that is more in line with your message, your branding, or whatever the case may be. Okay, so a little bit of formatting there. Just keep your eyes on the different options. Again, the tabs along the top, you can also right click to be able to get to the shortcut menu that will allow you to access those options like formatting, etc. So if you have a specific kind of chart in mind then instead of using that F11 key, you may want to go through the Insert tab. So let's show you how that works. It does involve selecting the data, just like we saw in the previous example. And on the Insert tab of the ribbon, we're going to find a whole group dedicated to the different kinds of charts that you can insert into your spreadsheets. So you can just go ahead and pick the one that you are interested in. There's usually additional subtypes available. And as you hover over, it will sort of give you an idea of what that's going to look like. So I'm going to go ahead and select this one, 3D custom clustered column. And you'll see right away one of the differences is that it's right here within the same sheet. Our F11 trick was one where it separated that chart on its own sheet. When we used the insert option and selected the chart, it put it on the same spreadsheet, and that's okay. It is blocking the information. I can go ahead and move that, just clicking and dragging to move that out of the way. But location-wise, you can modify where the chart is, and we'll take a look at that in just a moment. So here is my chart, and we just showed you how you can just go ahead and click and drag to move that chart around. If you prefer that chart to be a different size, you can use the corners or the side circles that you see pictured here to be able to adjust the size of that chart. So I'm just clicking and dragging, making it roughly about the same width as the data itself. And then in addition to that, just wanted to sort of go over a few other things that you can do with this chart. For example, if there's, right here, there's a nice spot for the chart title, and we saw this in the previous example as well, you can certainly go ahead and modify that just by double clicking to get in there and giving it a more effective title there. Yeah, so you can replace that. And if you don't want it, you can certainly select it and just use the delete key on your keyboard maybe to get rid of that. If it's on the same sheet, maybe it's not necessary to have the title repeated there. And again, that would just be selecting it and pressing the delete key. If you do remove that, then you have a little more room for the graphical representation of your data. So that's always nice. Okay. Just getting back to the whole idea of location. So if you use the insert option and pick the chart type, it will land on the same sheet. If you would like to move that to another location, maybe have it on its own sheet like our first example, you can certainly do that. You just have to make sure that your chart is selected, and then there are contextual tabs that get added to your ribbon. They're the chart tools tabs. There's one called design, and there is one called format. And we'll look at a little bit of the functionality on those as well as we go through our video today. But on the design tab, the very last icon, the button on the farthest to the right, is to move the chart. And you have those two options. It can be, let's move this forward a little bit. You can have it on a new sheet. You can actually give it a name at that point if you wanted to. So if I wanted the sheet to be named something, I could go ahead and type it in. Or I can have it as an object in any sheet in this workbook. It does have to be in the same workbook, right? So as an object in, or as in a new sheet. So let's go ahead and flip it to a new sheet. And once again, here is the data. It's on a sheet called Chart 2, Insert Chart, and then here is the chart sheet that we just created, okay? It's the same data, it's just a larger sort of surface to be able to display your chart. If it's on its own chart sheet and you want to be able to move it, well, you can do that as well. So you will have the same contextual tabs to your ribbon underneath Chart Tools up there at the top, Design, last button, Move Chart. And I'm just going to move it to be an object in, and I will use this drop down to see all of the sheets for this particular workbook will be listed here. And I just need to pick the sheet I would like to add it to. Click on OK. And we are back to it being in the same sheet as the workbook. Let me just do a quick undo there. And in order to move it, just going to click and drag it once again. And like we said, you can resize. You can move it anywhere you want in here. When the information you want to incorporate into your chart doesn't sit nicely in consecutive cells, then you're going to need to know this next bit of information. Let's say, for example, I wanted to compare the total sales for my data here. So I wanted the labels and I wanted the totals without including the individual details there. So in order to do something like that, you are going to obviously need to select the information, right? So select the first group of cells, and here's the key. You're going to hold down the control key, then click and drag to select the second group of cells. That allows you to just focus on what you need and not have to delete it after the fact or try to hide it, that sort of thing. So again, it's just select using your mouse, just your mouse at this point, clicking and dragging to select the first group of cells, then holding down the control key and clicking and dragging to select the second group of cells. Now, moving forward here, we want to do a pie chart, just show you some different options that are available with your pie charts. I'm going to go over to the Insert tab of the ribbon, and there is a pie chart option in the Charts group. Couple of different pie types that I can select. I'm going to do a 3D pie. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And just so I have a little bit of a larger canvas, I'm going to move that chart onto its own sheet, right? So I can come over here and move the chart. This is on the Chart Tools Design tab. Because this chart is selected, it's available. I just click that. And as we saw earlier, we're going to move that to a new sheet. And I'm just going to call this monthly sales. Okay. New sheet. Clicking on OK there after I've named it. So a little bit of a larger canvas here, and we're going to explore some options that we may use and commonly use in our pie charts. So it's true that I can have a chart title. I've already got the sheet named monthly sales. So if you don't want your chart title there at all, just click it to select it and press the delete key on your keyboard. I'm also going to get rid of the legend. The legend's at the bottom, and I'm going to go ahead and eliminate it and add instead data labels, and we'll show you what that looks like in a minute. So if you want to add or remove chart elements, one way to do that is on the Chart Tools Design tab. It's called Add Chart Element, but it's also used to remove chart elements as well. So if I select Legend, there's all those options there. I can move it to different places, top, bottom, left, right, or I can eliminate it with the None option. So let's choose that. Now, without a legend, I don't know what's what, so I am going to need to add data labels. So going back into that Add Chart Element, I can hover over the data labels option, and there is a menu that will give you some other things or some examples of data labels that you can include. I like to go all the way down to the bottom, more data label options, because what that will allow you to do is pick exactly what you need for your data labels, right? So you can actually, just sort of explore and see, well, do I want the series name? Do I want the category name? So you can check these boxes and it will add them into your data labels. So I'm going to do category name, which will tell me whether the sales came from the catalog, the phone, or the web. So basically that is, let's see, where is it? That would be this information over here from the original data there. Okay. I am going to turn off value and maybe turn on percentage so I can maybe compare and see, how they all sort of stack up to one another. And that's good, right? Unfortunately, these labels are very small. So we do want to increase them. And one way to do that would be, unfortunately, there isn't really an option here. In the text options, I can change the colors and things of the the fonts, a couple of other things that we'll explore in a minute, but I can't change the size of the font. So if you want to do that, one way to do it would be to right click one of these labels and then you get your font option. So I'm going to go ahead and choose the font option and maybe increase this. Another thing that is sort of annoying here is that as you increment it with the little spin controls over to the right, it's just tiny little increments. I want to make it significantly bigger, so I'm just going to go ahead and type a number into the size there, and once I click on OK, it will go ahead and apply that change. The other thing that you can do is just use while those data labels are selected, you can use the Home tab of the ribbon to increase the fonts. As long as those, like we said, data labels are selected, you can go ahead and use your standard font tools there to change the size, increasing, decreasing, font colors, etc. But that would be the way that you would control that. So you can, have those. You definitely need something, either a legend or a data label that sort of maps out or tells folks what each of those slices are going to represent. Another thing, since this is a 3D pie, we can maybe do a few things here in terms of the rotation. So I'm just going to close that just so you know how to get back in there if you needed to. If you needed to get into those options as well, you're going to be able to, for example, just right click, right? Depending on where you're pointing, as we saw earlier, wherever your mouse pointer is going to control the options that you see on that right click. So if you are, in the chart area, you may see different options than if you are right clicking on a pie slice. So I'm going to go in either the plot area or the chart area. Either one will give me access to the set of options that I want. So it's the 3D rotation that I want to get to. So I just want to open that back up again, and it shows me the 3D rotation. And one of the things we want to manipulate here is the X rotation. So as I manipulate the X rotation, the spin buttons here do a fine job. You'll see that your pie is actually spinning as I go up. It is spinning clockwise. As I go down, it's spinning counterclockwise. So if you want a particular pie slice to be at the top, the bottom, the left, the right, it's the X rotation that will allow you to do that. Okay, so that's what's going on there. Again, in order to get that, you are going to be able to right click the chart area or the plot area. Again, the menus are different, but the 3D rotation option will exist on those two different menus. Okay. All right, one other thing folks like to be able to control or show, I guess, is one slice pulled away from the pie itself. So if you wanted to do that, what you would do is go ahead and click the pie. In this case, I'm going to be doing the catalog slice. So I'm going to click the catalog slice. Now, the first time you click it, you're actually selecting all of the slices. So we need to click one more time on that catalog slice, and you'll see that the selection handles are exclusively on that blue slice. Then to get that separated from the rest of the pie slices, you're just going to click and drag it away from the center of that pie, and you'll see it will go ahead and extract that. And if you wanted to bring it back, just drag it in the opposite direction. Again, just click the pie to select all the slices, then click the slice you want to separate or explode, and then you can drag it away from the center and you'll get that exploded pie slice effect. And to bring it back in, just click and drag it in towards the center. When the numbers in a chart vary widely between the data series, or when you have mixed measurements or data types, for example, price and volume, or like we have here, flow in gallons per second and sediment in kilograms per hour, then you may consider adding a secondary axis, a secondary vertical axis, which can display a different measurement. It helps the scale, the overall effectiveness of the chart. And to do this, you will need to change the chart type to a combo chart. So we'll take a look at that. So here, of course, is my data. I'm just going to go ahead and create the chart first of all. And, you'll be able to, I'm just going to do a line chart here on the Insert tab. If I start off with just a line chart, right, you'll see why this may become a necessary sort of feature to add. So I'm just moving and resizing like we saw in the previous sort of points here in our video. And because of the different measurements, the numbers are skewing the chart. So the sediment, that's the orange line, just sort of looks like it's flatlining, right? It's not, very effective. And the reason there is because those numbers are much smaller. They are a completely different measurement. So it's comparing, it's trying to compare two different data types, which isn't very effective. So let's get this to work or look a little bit better. So in order to get this going, this secondary axis, your chart needs to be selected, and you are going to be using the Chart Tools Design tab at the top of the screen. That ribbon will give you the ability to change the chart type. So I'm going to go ahead and click that button over there on the right side. And these are all different kinds of charts that you can switch your chart to. So if you do produce a chart and want to change it at any point, this is where you would do that. And I'm going to come down and do a combo. So I want them both to be line charts, and I actually also want to have them with markers. So what I'm going to do is this. I am going to have the flow, right? That's that blue line there. I want that to be, I'm using the drop down on the right side of that flow option. I just am going to switch that to line with markers, right? So it's just going to have the markers at the points there. And then for sediment, I'm also going to do line with markers. But notice this checkbox over to the right, I can add that secondary axis here. So on the right side of my chart, and we'll see it bigger in a moment, I have those measurements that are more applicable to the sediment. And because you now have those two different scales, you can kind of see how they interact a little bit more. I'm going to click on OK. So you can see that secondary axis, that secondary vertical axis over there on the right. And that is the information and the numbers that apply to the orange line or the sediment in the kilograms per hour. So any chart can have multiple vertical axes. The key to it is to change the chart type to a combo, which we did through this option while the chart is selected. It was change chart type. We indicated combo, and you'll have your different data series. You'll have your ability to pick the chart type and make sure you're checking that secondary axis option. Now we're going to take a look at Sparklines. Sparklines are tiny cell-sized charts, and like other charts, your Sparklines give a visual representation of your data, but unlike the other charts we've looked at, Sparklines will only represent one data series, so it doesn't show how they compare to one another as we've seen in our previous charts. So let's go ahead and take a look at creating them and a little bit of formatting as well. So just like we did in the previous chart examples, you will want to start by selecting the information that you want to plot in your Sparkline. Again, just one data series, so you are not selecting all of your data. You're not selecting an entire month. You're just selecting the information for one data point, and that would be, for example, US Northeast, right? So I have that selected. On the Insert tab of the ribbon, there is a Sparkline group, and there's three different kinds of Sparklines. There's lines, there's columns, and there's win-loss. I'm going to do a column, so I'm clicking that option. Because my data range was selected already, it is pulling that into the appropriate setting, and all I need to do at this point is tell it where I want this first Sparkline to go. So of course the recommendation is to keep it as close to the data as possible, so I'm going to go ahead and just click where I want that Sparkline to go while I'm in the location range option there. Just clicking in B2, it will write that in for me, and I can click on OK. And there is my sparkline. So it does not look like much at this point because the cell, right, is not very tall. So let's take a look at that. I'm going to resize row 2. So I'm coming between the number 2 button and the number 3 button, and I'm going to click and drag down so that I can maybe make that cell taller and see the sparkline a little bit more clearly and have a better overall effect. So because they are cell size charts, the size of the cell is of course going to determine, you know, the clarity of that chart, of that little sparkline. So while your sparkline is select, let me go ahead and copy this down now. If I want that same sort of sparkline in all of the other regions, I can just use the fill handle in the bottom right to drag that down to the other locations, and it will go ahead and you know, build a sparkline for each row. I'm going to resize all of those rows, so I'm just clicking and dragging along the left side to select all of the rows that need to be resized, so have a little bit more height to them. And I just need to click and drag to resize one of them, and it will resize them all, okay? And that is true of the columns as well, but in this case, we want to resize those rows, giving them more height. Other things to consider: you can change the format as well. So as those sparklines are all selected, there is a Sparkline Tools Design tab, which will give you the ability to, you know, change to a different sparkline. So there's your line, there's your column. Win-loss is just going to show you the same size boxes above a baseline, imaginary baseline for positive numbers. And let me make a negative number here, and you'll be able to see that. Negative 3,400, right? So you'll see then that this particular kind of sparkline is to show win or loss. Above the line is positive numbers, below the line is negative numbers. Let me do an undo to get that positive number back, and I'm just going to keep those selected on the Sparkline Tools Design tab. Once again, I'm going to flip this back over to a column, and the height of the bars there are representative of the data that we see off to the right. So they're not intermingling with one another. They are just separate. One data series there is plotted per sparkline. So other things that you can add into your sparklines, you know, high points or low points, you can just check these boxes and it will go ahead and add those sort of things in there. And then if you want to change the design, you certainly can. So there is a gallery here of styles that you can go ahead and select from. You can go ahead and pick the one that you are interested in applying, and it will apply it as well. If there is a particular color you want that is not available in the gallery, there are options for that as well. And that wraps up our session for today. Thanks, and hope to see you again soon.